There's nothing worse than finding yourself triggered. There you were, minding your own business, and suddenly, bam, you're flooded with an intense emotional reaction. It's hard to function. Your brain goes out the window. You're a mess of hormones and adrenaline and crazy impulses. What the heck do you do? I'm going to share with you my ABCD emergency response framework for dealing with triggers so that you can calm yourself and get your day back on track. I'm Nicola, and my passion is helping parents and not yet parents deal with their stuff so they don't pass it on to their kids and repeat the cycle. And I've been exploring ways to resolve my patterns of pain for over 25 years. When I talk about being triggered, what I mean is any kind of sudden, intense emotional reaction, usually over the top or out of proportion to what just happened. And as I've dealt with my triggers over the years, I've noticed some standard strategies I've tended to use, and that's what I've developed into this ABCD emergency process, because honestly the intensity of our reactions to these triggers requires an emergency level kind of response to avoid havoc being created by our reaction to these triggers. So the first step in the ABCD process is to notice that you've been triggered, and developing this awareness is absolutely essential if you want to be able to turn down the intensity of your reactions. I've got a whole other video on spotting your triggers that you might want to watch to understand better how to do that. But we're looking for strong emotional, physical or mental reactions to anything. The trigger can be almost anything, whether it's an object, a place, a smell, an event, a person. Anything can be a trigger for us to create this reaction, and the factors that we're looking for are the suddenness of the reaction and the intensity of the emotions, or the intensity of the sensations that come as a result of that trigger happening. For example, I've learned over many years of experience that when I'm triggered, I tend to feel anxious, panicky. I feel like I've got adrenaline running through my system. I feel like either something bad has just happened or something bad is about to happen, but I'm on high alert. And so by learning what my patterns of being triggered look like, it makes it easy for me to recognize when I am being triggered. The second step in the ABCD process is to breathe. When you are triggered, you'll generally find that you are breathing faster or more heavily than you normally do, or maybe you'll actually notice that you're holding your breath entirely. So remembering to breathe and slowing down your breath is really important, because it sends a signal to your body and to your physiology that everything is actually okay. In this moment, no matter how you're feeling about what's going on, everything is actually okay. So take a long, slow, deep breath if you can. As deep and slow as you can. Even if it's not very deep and slow, it's still enough just to slow things down that little bit, because you're creating a pause between that trigger and your reaction to it, and that's key. And another thing you might want to do at this stage is to set boundaries. So whether that's changing the topic, ending the conversation, shutting your eyes, leaving the situation entirely if you need to, what you're doing is creating space for you to deal with your reaction to whatever just happened. And that space is really important because it allows you to deal with your reaction instead of it carrying you away into doing things that you didn't intentionally or consciously want to do. Something that we've learned, my husband and I, over the years in our relationship, is that when we have difficult conversations, it can shut him down. And so he's learned to say, okay, I need a time out, and then he'll go away, collect his thoughts and come back better able to engage constructively in that conversation. So having a way to set those boundaries to give you that space, however brief it is, to get your reactions under control is really important. The third step in the emergency response framework comes from the fact that as humans, we have a tendency to want to push away uncomfortable feelings. They don't feel good. We don't want to deal with them, but it's really important that in that moment you resist that urge. Resist the urge to push this experience you're having away. Instead, I want you to commit to figuring this out, and I want you to find the courage not to run away. Instead, I want you to commit to doing the thing that is right for you in the long term, so that you can actually shift your relationship with this trigger and make the most of this opportunity. Because when you are triggered, it's a clue to something in you that is not in balance and that can actually adversely affect you if you don't figure it out. something I like to tell myself in these situations when I'm triggered is that if I can figure out what's going on with this, resolve some of it, weaken its hold on me, then I don't have to deal with this again. And to me, that's motivation enough to make that commitment to do the work. Remember, all of this is just happening a lot of the time in just a heartbeat or two. You're noticing you're triggered, you're taking a breath, you're saying, okay, I've got to deal with this. And every step in that process is key. Even though it happens really quickly, make sure you are doing each of those steps so that you are setting yourself up for success in dealing with this trigger. And the fourth step in the emergency response process is to deal with whatever just happened. And there's actually 5 steps in this process. So there's a 5D process that helps you deal with whatever just happened. And I'll go into this in more detail in another video. But essentially, the first step is that you diagnose. You figure out what just happened. You unearth the issues or the triggers. And I've got a whole video on uncovering your crud that you might find helpful to watch to help you figure out what it is that exactly just happened. The second step is to defer, but only if absolutely necessary. Sometimes right now isn't the right moment to deal with this. Maybe the timing's wrong, maybe the situation isn't appropriate, or maybe you're overwhelmed and you're just not ready. So if you have to, defer dealing with this, but only for as long as you absolutely have to, and make a decision to come back to this as soon as possible, because the further away you get from this, the harder it's going to be to pull it apart and figure out what actually happened and weaken its hold on you for next time. The third step in this 5D process is to decide. Once you start digging into this stuff, your issues and your triggers, it gets messy and even more uncomfortable. And I can understand there might be a tendency to want to run away, to not deal with this, to say, no, it's too hard, I don't want to go there. And I get that, but it's so important at this point to make a firm, irreversible decision that you are going to figure this out and you are going to resolve this no matter what it takes. And that is key to helping you deal with this. Especially because the fourth step in this 5D process is to dissolve, and that can take more energy and time, and it's not necessarily going to be immediate. Sometimes it can be, but it's going to take a little bit of work and maybe even some messiness. And so you can dissolve using any number of techniques that are available. There's a whole bunch in the world of psychology, a whole bunch in the world of alternative healing and energy work. And I've put together a list of my favorite techniques for releasing emotional issues, and I'll put a link to that for you in the description. But basically, to get on this list, the techniques need to be quick, they need to be effective, they need to be something I can do in private, they need to be something that I can do on my own, and a few other criteria, because I'm interested in techniques that actually do the job. So you probably find that list helpful as you start to dissolve your trigger and the issues that are underlying it. And the final step is, once you've shifted your relationship with this trigger because of the work you've done up to this point, then you will do things differently from this point forward. You have changed your relationship with this trigger because of the work you've done, and so you will be able to make different choices and experience things differently and react differently. And so that's the 5D process. It's diagnose, defer if you have to, decide to do what it takes, dissolve using whatever technique you like, and do things differently from now on. And once you've done the ABCD process a few times, you can start moving on to what I like to call stage E. You can think of this as evolution or empowerment or enlightenment, or whatever word sits well for you. But the point is that things start to get better because you're shifting things. You're actually making space for stuff to change and you're doing the work. Now you've got a simple framework that you can use in the moment to manage these triggers as they happen. Stop them taking over and leading you into making poor decisions or damaging the things that matter most to you. But it's going to take practice. It's not something you're going to get the first time around. You might get it wrong plenty of times. You might even find yourself doing the steps out of order, but that doesn't matter. What matters is that you have this framework now. You know what all the steps are, and you're back in the driver's seat to be able to manage these triggers more effectively. You might also find it useful to practice grounding yourself. Grounding is the practice of bringing yourself back to be present in the current moment. And when you're triggered, you're often not in the current moment. And I've got a list of 97 different techniques that you could try to see which ones help you to bring yourself back and be grounded in the present moment so you can deal with these triggers more effectively. And if you'd like a simple technique to help you sit with these uncomfortable emotions as they arise instead of shoving them away and not dealing with them, you might want to watch this video next. And I'll see you in the next one.